Is persuasion and manipulation the same thing? This is an age-old question that I've been asked countless times that I'm going to answer in today's video. And the answer might actually surprise you. So if you want to learn whether or not manipulation and persuasion are the same thing, then sit down and stay tuned. Hey guys, my name is Paul Macetta, and I am a researcher and a publisher in the field of human communication. So if you like learning about things like human communication, influence, persuasion, NLP, salesmanship, and all that jazz, then go ahead and consider subscribing and hit that bell notification so you get updated when I release more videos like this. So, the age-old question, is manipulation and persuasion the same thing? This is a question that I've been asked countless times in my 13-year career of teaching and training people how to become better communicators, and in some cases using the powers of influence and persuasion to do so. So I've had countless people ask me when I'm showing them a technique or a strategy, they're like, isn't this manipulation? I've had that group of people. I've had some people that take what I show them and blatantly use it to manipulate people. Unfortunately, that's just part of the game. And then I've had other people who have no desire to learn the stuff that I teach them, and they'll comment or they'll write in and they'll say, this is evil, you're manipulating people, you're coercing people, blah, blah, blah. So they put the influence and persuasion techniques and strategies that I teach people into the same category as manipulation. And so I want to answer the question today, is persuasion and manipulation the same thing? And the answer is yes and no. So all manipulation is persuasion, but not all persuasion is manipulation. So I'll say that again. All manipulation involves persuasion, but not all persuasion involves manipulation. So what is the difference? The difference is when you influence or persuade someone, you are using a set of skills. Those set of skills could involve your spoken language, so your vocal pace, your vocal rate, your tonality, your speech, your rhythm, as well as your nonverbal language, including your body language and your gestures, as well as your intellect and your ability to leverage logic, reason, and emotion to get the other person to change their perspective on something, to accept a new idea, to change their mind about something, to make a decision about something that benefits both you and them, or just benefits them. That's the definition of persuasion. Hey guys, if you enjoy this type of content, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification so you get updated when I release more videos like this. It really does help the algorithm. And make sure you click the first link in the description so you can get access to a free resource I've set up just for you. Manipulation is when you use a set of tools. It could be the same set of tools, right? It could be your spoken language, your verbal language, your nonverbal language, your intellect, your ability to reason, your ability to leverage emotion, as well as a host of other tools to ultimately get people to do what you want for your benefit only. So the difference really between persuasion and manipulation is the intent of the end user. If your goal is to help somebody change their perspective or accept an idea or make a decision that either benefits the both of you or just benefits them, that's persuasion. If it's to just benefit you and you're utilizing things like deception, coercion, or playing on vulnerabilities, that is ultimately how we define manipulation. So, more specifically, there are three components that differentiate persuasion versus manipulation. The first thing is, like I said, the intent. Persuasion seeks win-win solutions that benefit both parties, whereas manipulation focuses on personal gain with no regard for what's in it for the other party. The second component is transparency. Persuasion is built on honesty and openness about goals and motives. Manipulation often hides the true intentions or distorts facts. So there's always some lack of transparency when it comes to manipulation. There should be no lack of transparency when it comes to persuasion. In fact, I would argue that if you need to avoid transparency, if you need to hide your true intentions, if you need to distort the facts, you're not really persuading people. Remember, it's easy to persuade somebody when you lie to them. If you lie to somebody about something, it's always much easier to persuade them. But that's not persuasion, that's manipulation. Manipulation, by the way, is much easier than persuasion. Much easier. So much easier to manipulate than it is to persuade. Why? Because first of all, you are focusing on vulnerabilities and coercion, which are very powerful and require less effort to use. Second of all, you are hiding the truth, right? Because lack of transparency and lying ultimately is hiding the truth. And the truth could be the thing that makes it more difficult for the person to say yes. When you remove that, it becomes easier for the person to say yes. But that's not true persuasion. And honestly, if you're good at manipulating people, you are not a skilled person of persuasion or influence. You're just a really good liar. So that's the second component. The third component is the consent component. So persuasion respects the other person's autonomy and their freedom to choose, whereas manipulation pressures, deceives, or coerces to control decisions. So we have intent, transparency, and consent. If any one of those are altered or edited in any capacity, you are manipulating somebody rather than persuading them. So oftentimes people will ask me, well, like, how do I spot manipulation? Like, how can I tell if somebody's trying to manipulate me? So the first key indicator is emotional blackmail. So if somebody is using fear, guilt, or obligation to control your actions, they are manipulating you. The second thing is guilt tripping. So if they are leveraging past mistakes or weaknesses to influence your decisions, they are manipulating you. Look, the reality is none of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. We all have weaknesses. We all have things that we could be better at. And I think there's a fine line between accepting responsibility for mistakes and learning from them, and then allowing those mistakes to dictate how you should be living your life now, and specifically allowing them to become blockages, stopping you from living the best life that you could be living now, and more importantly, making the world a better place by providing value for other people. And so oftentimes, the person that's trying to manipulate you knows that you're stuck in some way because of this guilt, that you have about a previous mistake that you made, and they will use that. They will use that to their advantage to get you to do what you want, what they want you to do. And what you have to realize is that a past mistake is just that. It's something that happened in the past. It's behind you. Hopefully, you learned from it, but it should have no effect on the decision that you're making now, unless that decision conflicts with what you learned from that mistake. But oftentimes, the person that's trying to manipulate you is not using it in that context. They're using it to make you feel guilty so that you can do what they want you to do. And then the last thing is withholding information. So if they are hiding any key details that give them an advantage, they are manipulating you. And this is why you need to ask as many questions as possible so that you can clearly understand if anything is being intentionally left out. That's an important part, because sometimes people can leave things out innocently. You know, maybe they forgot to tell you something. I've had conversations with people where maybe I sold them something, or I influenced them, or I persuaded them to do something, and then afterwards I realized that I left something out. I will either call them back or email them. I will immediately get in touch with them and say, hey, listen, there was something I forgot to talk to you about that could possibly change your decision on this topic, and I want to make sure we're on the right page with this, and I would feel guilty if I didn't go back and tell you this. So I want to make sure, I want to be 100% transparent with you. This is what I left out, or this is the part that I missed, right? Sometimes people mistakenly do that. Hopefully they catch it. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes a person can innocently leave something out, but they didn't mean any harm by it, and then you catch it, and then they admit that they left it out, but it was unintentional. But it's when things are intentionally left out, when people are hiding key details specifically because they know that if you knew those key details, you might say no to what they're asking you to do. So emotional blackmail, guilt tripping, and withholding information. So the question that I get after how do I recognize if someone's manipulating me is usually, how can I persuade other people and not manipulate them? How do I do it in such a way where I know that I'm not manipulating them? And like, look, what I'm going to say is, you already know the answer to that question. It's my belief that all of us are born with an innate sense of knowing right from wrong. I think this is a virtue that God has given all of us, that we're all born with, unless you experience some sort of a mental illness or a psychotic break where you don't know the difference between the two. That being taken out of the equation, I believe that we're all born with an innate sense of knowing the difference between right and wrong. And so, like, if you really have to question what you're doing, it's probably manipulative. I mean, if you have to, if it's more than one thing that's happening in the conversation and you're like, oh, I wonder if this was manipulative, I wonder if that was manipulative, it probably was. And so now there could be cases where maybe you want to talk about something, you want to bring up something in the conversation, but you think maybe it might open up a can of worms and it might be unnecessary. What I would say is, do it anyway. Like, my stance on this is, if you want to avoid manipulation, you can never lose by being 100% transparent. So if there's something in your mind that you're wondering if you should bring up, just bring it up. So I'll give you an example. One of my business partners in another business, I started out working for him as a coach for his marketing clients, and then eventually we became partners. And I had this client who was his client. So let me be clear. He paid to acquire the customer. At the time, this was his business, 100%. I was a paid contractor, a paid coach. And the client was mine in the sense that I was the one responsible for working with her and getting her the result. But in terms of who owned the client, meaning whose customer was it, who paid to acquire the customer, who built the relationship with the customer to get the customer to buy the coaching package, he did that. It was 100% on him. And so I worked with this woman for probably 8 to 12 weeks. Really great person, such a sweet soul. One of the best clients that I've ever had. Enjoyed working with her so much. And what I helped her with specifically was her marketing. So she reached out to me about a year later, and she needed help with creating her online product. And so she had created all the marketing, but she hadn't actually created the product yet, which is a separate conversation. But she was like, I know you've created so many online products. Would you be willing to sit down with me if I paid you? Would you be willing to do some coaching calls with me and show me your process for creating, educational courses? And I said, sure, I'd be open to that. Absolutely. Tell me exactly what you're looking for, and then I'll get back to you. So she listed out exactly what she was looking for. Now, I have two choices here. I could proceed and work with her and take the money that she's giving me. And the thought is, well, even though it was originally his customer, what she's asking for now is a result of the relationship that her and I built together. That's number one. And number two, the service that she's asking for now, that other company, they don't provide that service. They're not in the business of teaching people how to create courses and products and things like that. So that could have been my initial line of thinking, right? But something in me was like, no, I need to run this by this other person, and I need to lay it out for them. And if I don't get their seal of approval on this, if I don't get their, I don't get them telling me, yeah, go ahead, you got it. You got my vote. Go ahead. You're cleared. Go for it. I wouldn't feel good about it. Now, I ran this by a few of my friends, actually, just because I was curious to see what their thoughts were on this. And I explained the whole situation to them. And interestingly enough, a few people were like, nah, man, you're not doing anything wrong. They don't provide that service. The woman came back to you. She didn't go back to them. And again, they don't provide that service. So you're not stealing anything from them. And so honestly, by you going and bringing it up to them, you're kind of opening up a can of worms where if they are manipulative, money-hungry people, they might say to you, well, yeah, you could work with her, but you have to give us half of whatever she's paying you. And now you're in a situation where you're paying them half of the money for the work that you're going to be doing, and that's just not business savvy. That's not a good way to think. But I knew that these guys, or this guy specifically, is not a money-hungry person. And he is a good person. And he is a very, very, has a high level of integrity when it comes to business. And so I just knew in my heart that running it by him was the right thing to do. And so I presented the situation to him. He gave me his blessing. And he said to me, I respect you so much for bringing this to my attention because you didn't have to. And there's probably no way I would have ever found out about it. And honestly, you're not really doing anything wrong because we don't offer that service. But thank you so much for bringing it to my attention. Well, years later, him and I are now partners in his business. And one of the reasons he told me that he selected me as a partner was because of my integrity, my transparency, and my loyalty. So just think about that for a second. I wasn't thinking this far ahead when I did this, but look how that simple decision that I made, how that positively impacted me later on. Because now I'm part of a way bigger opportunity to help more people and make more money in a much bigger position in a business than I would have been had I held that back from him, and maybe he would have viewed me as disloyal for doing that. So I would have traded off a few $1,000s that I would have made for coaching that person for an infinitely larger opportunity to make more money and to help more people, just by simply being upfront and transparent about this situation. Now, again, I wasn't thinking that far ahead. I wasn't saying I should tell him about this because it'll positively impact me if an opportunity opens up later. It wasn't about that. It was just about doing the right thing, what I felt was the right thing to do in that moment. So, number one is you gotta just ask yourself internally, does this feel right or does it feel wrong? And always just go with transparency. That is number one. You cannot lose by being transparent. And what I mean by you cannot lose is look, at the end of the day, if the person says no because you were transparent with them, then so be it. Then so be it. You don't want to influence and persuade and get people to say yes to you based on false promises and false premises and not being transparent, because ultimately that's going to come back to hurt you later on, and it's just not the right thing to do. So number one, be transparent. Number two is to lead with empathy. Put your own perspectives, your own needs, your own goals aside, and think about them. Think about what is the best situation for them. Yes, I'm going to get something out of this too, perhaps, but what is in it for them? And let me start with the thing that I could do that would benefit them the most, and then we can iron out the details from there. But if you start with what's in it for you first, that is a gateway to manipulation. Let me say that again. If you start with what is in it for you, if that's what you're building from, what can I get out of this, or how's this going to benefit me the most, if that's your starting place, you are way more likely to drift into manipulation than if you start from what is the best thing for this person, or what is the best thing for the both of us. If you start there, now of course there's going to be, you're going to go off course. You might wind up here, you might wind up there. You might tweak things, you might change things, you might alter things, but it's important that you start from the right place. And the right place to start is, how will this benefit them, or how will it benefit the both of us? Not how will it benefit me. And then lastly is to respect the person's autonomy. So allow the other person to make decisions without pressuring them. Present options, but don't push. A truly persuasive conversation leaves the other party feeling empowered, not manipulated. So I've said this before and I'll say it again. True persuasion is when the person that you're communicating with persuades themselves to take the desired action, to make the desired decision, to accept the desired idea or concept or worldview or opinion or value system, whatever it may be. True persuasion is when that person takes the initiative to make the change that you are asking them to make, not when you force them to do it. So be transparent, lead with empathy, and respect autonomy. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up button. Leave me a comment. Would love to know your thoughts on this. And if you enjoy this type of content, consider subscribing and hit that bell notification so you get updated when I release more videos like this.